Today, we will talk about XLM and how I intend to use Lobstr to realize gains on my non-stellar assets. I am talking about gain realization primarily because I have been interested for a while now on how exactly to handle the tax end of crypto. And in all honesty, I haven't really had to think about it a whole lot until about a month ago when everything started to pop off. Trump has been talking about removing capital gains taxes on US issued cryptocurrencies, which would appear to be in line with a lot of other tax related topics he has talked about in his campaign. And there, of course, has been talk about him removing income tax outright, which I am not expecting that. I am not planning on it. And I would highly suggest that you do not plan on that because I just don't see a way where we will not have any income tax. And I'll expand on that conspiracy end of things here in a little bit. I was into these kinds of conspiracy topics for a while before I ever got into crypto, just because I don't trust anything that comes out of either end of the government. And this kind of a outlook has a lot of very coincidental ties into events that have happened over the last 4 years or so. And it goes back as far as the 1980s, I think, when the Nasara stuff really began to come out. And I'm just not at that point, but I would be happy to be proven wrong. I come back to the point that allegedly Trump wants to remove all capital gains taxes on cryptocurrencies issued by US companies for 2 points. One is that I think that in reality, that would be a pretty hard push, even if crypto and digital assets or certain kinds of them are called out as commodities and end up under the CFTC. The other point is a little bit more concerning.
Trump was saying zero tax for crypto.
Hold on a minute. So that whole story, you know that story of that, right? The Trump 0% tax. It was invented by Base Carbon.
Really?
So when the election stuff happened, Base Carbon invented this rumor. It didn't get community noted, so they've been running with it. Then news started picking up on it. Like the whole meme is that I'm like almost sure of that, and he keeps tweeting about it. He's like laughing about it today because I saw him invent this rumor and it never got picked up. Look, he said it's news now and it's breaking. GM, like he invented this thing. It's not true.
This is amazing.
But like, you know how it is? Like you speak a thing and then it becomes a reality if it gets big enough. I'm like 99% sure of this.
Wow, that's definitely
Yeah.
mainstream.
Clear at this point on the story behind it. However, once I thought about it a bit more, I'm not sure that Trump himself has ever actually referred to removing capital gains tax on US issued crypto. So if anyone has a reference to him explicitly saying that, or anyone in his cabinet, I would be happy to update that. Here, before I get into explaining how exactly I intend to use Lobstr in my profit taking strategy, I want to talk about crypto tax. And I am not a tax expert. I am not an accountant. I'm not a CPA, and it's not tax advice, obviously. I am only explaining what I have interpreted at this point in time. So if I were to convert a coin into fiat on an exchange, I would get taxed on gains. If I were to convert a coin into a stable coin, I would get taxed on gains. If I were to sell a stable coin that I had previously exchanged for a different coin, and I didn't profit on that specific transaction, then there would not be a new amount to actually tax there, and that the tax would come from that exchange into a stable coin itself. I have had a couple of people comment on this, and it appears as if I am generally right. Selling any crypto to either a stable coin or directly into fiat would be a taxable event. if you swap a coin into a stable coin and then at some other time convert that stable coin into fiat, then it doesn't have a gain and would not end up as an actual taxable event. Bobby A posed a question on preferred off ramps outside of a centralized exchange. And I have posted it a couple of times over the past couple of days. But at this point, my main strategy is to send non-stellar assets into Lobstr with their cross-chain deposits that convert into XLM and then exchange that into USDC and then send it out into some type of cold storage. As for my stellar assets, I will probably do some kind of a combination of Lobster, Stellar X, or Stellar Term, depending on which of those platforms is the most reliable with the expected high volumes at a later date. I intend to convert into stables and specifically USDC on Stellar because with what I have found, I think that USDC will essentially end up as a de facto US CBDC. On top of that, USDC on XLM has extremely low transaction fees because it's on XLM. I don't want to touch USDC as an ERC20 at all. And I am primarily converting into stables because I will cash out a certain amount of it. I don't exactly have a well-defined plan or intent on that part yet. I want to keep a lot of it in stablecoins so that I am easily able to transfer it into DeFi applications after everything has evened out. And I want to make it really clear that I'm not trying to avoid having to pay taxes because that is not okay according to the corporate tax and criminal codes. And I don't want to end up in a bad spot because I was trying to beat the system. One way or another, the IRS is going to find you if it doesn't add up. And I got a couple of comments like this here, and I have gone down that rabbit hole and I went extremely far into that. And what this guy posted here, if you actually look at the tax code itself, he is 100% correct in my interpretation of things. And I just am not really pursuing that because there are a lot of other tangential implications that I don't really want to try to accommodate at this point in time. And I commented on how the IRS will end up finding you at one point because, in part, and because I am talking a lot about Stellar here, Stellar formed an exclusive partnership with Elliptic in April of 2020. They are a blockchain analytics company who is concentrating on preventing, detecting, and actively pursuing criminal activity in DLT. And on top of that, the IRS has actually acquired Elliptic's subscription-based tool. And it is called out here with that transaction because it's a government thing. And that was in part because the IRS launched Operation Hidden Treasure to identify unreported income from crypto assets. And that was in 2021. And I think that most of the people here understand that I am not a fan of the IRS and I'm not a fan of anything that comes out of the government because I don't trust any of them. Here is an example of how the US Department of Treasury has exposed a money laundering network using digital assets to evade sanctions. And it is interesting because Elliptic, what was picked up by the IRS, and the department name called out here is the Department of the Treasury. So I would think that one way or another that Elliptic was involved. So I do want to talk about some taxes before I get into the lobster explanation. On nerdwallet.com, it has an example calculator on here. So let's say that you purchased 5K of SHX and sold it for 100K, which would result in a pre-tax capital gain of 95K. Let's say that you make 1,000 per year in W-2 income, which would take your total taxable income up to $145,000. If you held your crypto for 1 year, you would only be subject to capital gains taxes, which would be $14,250. If you are a trader and you held it for less than 1 year, it goes significantly up. Here is the information on the cross-chain deposits with Lobstr. It is a good article on their site and it explains it step by step. However, just for the sake of illustration, I have recorded the process on a video as well. I wouldn't have ever found out about this if it wasn't for Captain X or Debunk Gelpie, who I have been connected with for probably almost a year now, because he was one of the first people I came across on X who was actually talking about SHX. And if you're not following him, I would highly recommend to. From the home screen, tap the 3 lines and hit deposit in the top right. Here you click on swap from another chain to Stellar, and you are able to deposit practically anything and it will convert into XLM. It is not up right now, but if it is, it would provide an address and you send whatever asset it is to that address with the specific amount that you typed in, and it will convert into XLM. It takes anywhere between about 5 and 10 minutes on average, and I have converted XRP, XDC, and some ERC20 tokens into XLM using Lobstr.